It's the Final Word Cricket Podcast. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon, Season 16, Episode 15. Big show ahead today. Some of it will be recorded now. Some of it will be recorded later on location at Westfield, Stratford City. We'll explain why when we get to that part of the show. The Test Season 3 has been released. Was that the best ever round of county championship cricket? We'll report. You decide. Lots going on around the T20 World Cup, which starts in only 10 days from now. Some admin off the top, but fun admin at that. Hello, Jeff.
Hello. Yes, also the greatest IPL game ever, maybe.
Yes.
Plenty going on this week, the Test documentary and so on. But biggest news for us off the top, we have done it. Neither you or I are technologically minded people, but the ad-free feed for the Final Word now exists. You can get it without the pre-rolls, without the breaks, without the other bits and pieces. You can get it clean. You can get it fresh. You can get it raw. If you're on Patreon, this is now a perk for people who sign up to support the show. You can get a different, secret, special link just for you that lets you access the RSS feed without automated inserts. Oh, frabtious day, the trumpet sound, the angels sing. Here we are. It's only taken us about a year to try to get this up and running, but it now works.
You can get it any old how. Matter of fact, I've got it now. The ad-free feed of the Final Word. And yet, the easy way to understand this, by the way, that's still one of Winnie's favourite songs to play her in the bath. I have a variety of different VB ads from the 80s and 90s that we stroll through on YouTube to keep her occupied.
What's the baby version? You can get it crying. You can get it crawling. You can get it falling down the stairs. Matter of fact, this is a picnic for teddy bears.
Very good. Maybe you should do that. That can make you some money, Jeff. Side hustle.
I saw some Bluey books here in the news in the post office in Lisbon in Portuguese. So it's good to see that they've crossed the language barrier, and that I don't know what Bluey translates to, Azulo or something, but they're over here.
Yeah, we watched it in French when we took Rachel away for her 40th a few months ago in Paris. It was everywhere, ubiquitous around the world. But yeah, the ad-free feed. So the genesis of this is that we've been, Jeff, for a couple of years now, been working as part of the Sport Social Podcast Network and our friends over there. And they insert the automated ads that you hear at the start, middle and end of a show. And they've kindly allowed us to do this, which is a great thing. So if you're a patron and you want to get the clean feed, well, Jeff, you can explain how, but that's the upside. And it's not that hard to do. But the key point here is you need to join our Patreon first, which is how you can support the show the other way, which is also very kind of you.
Yep, it's pretty simple. Once you join up, you send us a message and say, "Can I have the feed?" And we send you a link, and you take that link and plug it into your podcast app. They all differ, but there's an option in the menu to look for shows via a feed rather than searching for the name of the show. And if you do that, it'll pull up this private feed, which you will have access to, which others don't, which just filters out any automated inserts so that you get the show as we upload it rather than as it comes through the different players who all do their own things to it. I don't know if apps like Spotify and stuff kind of jam their own stuff in there. They probably do because they have to pay Joe Rogan somehow. It really tickles me when people are like, "Oh, I don't follow mainstream media, man. I listen to Joe Rogan." You're like, he's the highest paid podcaster in the world. That's mainstream media. Sorry, that's what it is. Enjoy. Anyway, if you want to send us some of your paycheck, Joe, go ahead. But yeah, it's available. It's very doable. Send us a message. We'll sort it out. And in doing so, you can also help support the show directly and enjoy a different experience.
Yeah, that's right. You can be part of the weekend shows with Storytime. We've been doing 2 of those a weekend of late, which has been taxing but very enjoyable. The ep that I recorded with Daniel on Friday was loose as, and you probably have some fun listening to our interpretation of Paul Nixon's Wikipedia page and having Paul Collingwood on the show last week, which wasn't expected but quite funny, talking about the Adelaide debacle of 2006. So a colleague cameo there when Daniel caught up with him last week, and all the other bits and pieces that you get on the weekend show, not to mention the Discord channel, which has been driving our push to 30,000 quid for the Lord's Taverners, Jeff. We had a meeting. Meeting's the wrong word.
Unorthodox means as well.
Yes.
So this is my favourite bit. So one of the story times we did went back over our listener Pip Clark, who won the TV show Hard Quiz with a specialist subject of Glenn McGrath, and was made to sing her Glenn McGrath Christmas carol that she is keen to add she wrote when she was 10 years old. She's not a grown woman writing songs about Glenn McGrath, but she was a small, strange child writing songs about Glenn McGrath. But what came out was that it actually had 10 verses, and she only did one of them on the TV show. So other listeners to the show have got wind of this, and they've then been they've painted her into a corner by saying, well, we'll donate X, Y, and Z to the Taverners Fund if you record the full show, if you record the full song. So she's now done a YouTube version of the full, the American Pie version of the Glenn McGrath Christmas Carol, not the radio edit, and now they're petitioning for us to find a way to play it to Glenn McGrath, and also promising money if we can find a way to do that. So
I'm pretty sure we can.
Yeah,
this is the sort of thing that we can do. We've both worked with Glenn. This shouldn't be too hard to achieve at some point. I don't know when the time frame they've set.
Yeah.
But certainly during the Australian summer, we see plenty of Glenn. So we'll take that on notice. Between now and then, half marathon weekend is here. You won't hear us talking about, well, probably not much. We'll probably talk about it next week. But after this week, it'll be done and dusted. We've got over 16,000 quid in the fundraiser account now, which is absolutely amazing. We've been adding about £1,000 a day. That's due to all the hard work, not only of the people running, which has been huge, but also people listening to the show. So if you're one of the 450-something people who've contributed already, we thank you for it. It's a huge thing. 21,000 young people were helped last year and had a relationship with cricket through the TABS programs who otherwise wouldn't. Disadvantaged kids in the community, a lot of whom have disabilities as well. So this is your chance to do something really good and support a wonderful cause and support the runners. 50 of them had that Zoom catch up last night. We're ready to roll. Everyone's got their Vaseline ready for their nipples, Jeff. Everyone has got their running singlets ready to roll. They've got their hoodies that I'm wearing right now. We've got our dinners booked. We've got our cafes sorted, all the rest of it. All that's left now is for us to get to the start line. We're in the middle of our taper. We're talking about gels to consume when running, all the fun stuff. It's going to be great. And that's all, that's not unrelated to the Patreon either, because if not for Patreon, we wouldn't have Discord. If not for Discord, we wouldn't have 50 people running this thing. And it's a nice virtuous cycle. So A, join the Patreon, get the ad-free feed. B, if you haven't chipped in yet for the marathon, the link is in the show notes. We'd love to hit 30,000 by the time we hit the starting line on Sunday. That would make it all the more sweet. If everyone can chuck in a little bit, it makes it that much better. And the fact that we've got this Pip side hustle running to raise more money makes it even more enjoyable. So great stuff.
Yeah, the gels. I'm just imagining someone with like a shotgun bandolier full of Zupa Dupas or something, just pulling one out as they run the marathon and downing it for that. I've got an idea. These wieners will give me the quick burst of energy I need to escape as you power through. Look, it's been a cheerful few weeks, and occasionally people get to do things like what you're doing, which is take a bunch of people go-karting at Westfield later today. Yeah,
well, I might bring that up when we get to the Westfield bit of the show. But yeah, part of the show today, I will go out there. I don't think I can realistically go-kart. I had a cricket game on Sunday when all of my little niggles caught up with me. Not that I had to exert myself too much, but it's more that having run so much and other bits and pieces. So I'm very much tapering now. I'm just going to yoga every day to get ready. And I'm playing cricket on Thursday as well, which is the last game that I'll play before the run. But yeah, go-karting later with a bunch of our patrons who are all running the marathon as well.
Yeah. Hey, thoughts from our show, from us going out to Josie Dooley at the moment, the Renegades keeper, whose work we've enjoyed through the Big Bash over the last few seasons, who had a stroke recently. She's on holiday in Hawaii, and she's managed to get back to Brisbane now, but had one of those horrible situations where it's a fluid on the brain situation, and that can come on really quickly and deteriorate quickly. So we're sort of waiting on news about her condition and recovery, but it's an awful thing that she's going through, and her family and friends and everyone close to her. So just wanted to mention that and send our best wishes her way.
Yeah, not that we need many reminders of the fragility of life, but you hear stuff like that and you're kind of reminded, aren't you, that it's best to take the approach that things like this happen to people from nowhere, and that it's it's good to plan for the future, but try and live in the moment as well.
So we've got a fair bit to get through on the show. We've got the test doco. This came through when I was doing a bunch of preparation for other things, and I haven't had time to sit down and watch it yet, although I think it's going to be a spicy one. It felt like, the first season of the test was novelty value, therefore it was quite exciting. The second season was a bit, they didn't have as much to work with. It was shorter. It felt almost like it was over before it began. This one's all last year's Ashes, and we were there for every thrust and parry of the entire thing, so we know that there was an awful lot to work with, and there would have been even more behind the scenes.
Yeah, I kind of got a bit emotionally caught up in this watching it with Rach, because we got married last year, and it was such a big deal for us professionally. Getting around the country commentating on an Ashes series, and the show had never been bigger with what we're making each night at Stumps and all the other bits and pieces that go with an Ashes series, all the controversy at the back of Lords, the great finishes. And this doco brings it all together so wonderfully. And it's just great to revisit bits that I'd almost forgotten that happened on the field, because we were so wrapped up in it was condensed, right? And Adrian and I spoke about this in the interview that went out yesterday, the director of the test, the most recent episode in the feed. There's a sense that it's hard to keep perspective on the actual cricket due to how overwhelming the story was. Like, is this the best Ashes series since 2005? And those kind of debating points and the drama at Lords. And yeah, the doco, one of the great parts of it, as it's been throughout the 3 seasons, is that you get the instantaneous reaction from people who were there. We've had time now to dwell and consider and think about and ruminate and write about all these controversial moments or significant moments in the series. Here you get to see Pat Cummins within, minutes of coming off the ground after the Bairstow stumping. You get to hear Mitch Marsh talking about what went on in the lunchroom from his mouth. You get to hear the scene stealer Marcus Harris respond to what he thought of it, which was very, very funny. And we'll put out a social media clip of that from our conversation with Adrian. But yeah, all of it combined together was a really impressive bit of work. I'm glad they went back to England and did it that way. I think there's actually now room for one of these documentaries for every Ashes series played in England. Not entirely sure it works in Australia, is my gut feel. And kind of your point about season 2, I don't know. There's something about Test cricket in Australia which can be a little bit samey. And I don't know why. Maybe it's that we're so conditioned to watching Australia beat visiting teams. Certainly when England have came here, they're so infrequently done well. It might be different in 25, 26 if the McCullum Stokes side are on fire when they get here. It'll be worth having the documentary cameras on that if England really do show up. But whenever we see Australia play in England, invariably it's interesting. I can't think of a boring Ashes series in England in my lifetime. Maybe a couple in the 90s didn't stand out quite so much. But yeah, all told, great to do it.
2015 was pretty drab.
No, sorry, right you are. 15 was shit. Yeah, 15 was a shocker. But that's an outlier, right? Every Ashes series, almost all of them.
The ones in Australia, if it's not competitive, like a season where Australia lost at home would be interesting.
True.
And because they ended up not getting that India series, the 2-1 during COVID, because they couldn't tour, couldn't travel with the team, all the rest of that stuff, so they missed out on what would have been a belter there. I'd be interested to see things like whether say that Australian team last summer would be, they put on their public face that everything's fine, but would they have been kind of relieved or a bit scared of losing some of those games against the couple against Pakistan where they're in position to lose them at different times? How relieved would they be to get away with those wins, to what the response is after that West Indies loss, that sort of thing. But yeah, generally, an Australian home summer doesn't sort of guarantee you interest in the same way.
Interesting you say that. Just I don't know whether they would have been desolate when they lost to the Windies in Brisbane.
I don't think they would have been desolate.
You know what I mean? In the same way that in the same way you get the emotion when they lose at Leeds. And when they lose at the Oval, and we know what happened in 2019 and the outpouring of cricketing grief that day and being made to rewatch it the next day, and the cameras involved in that. The other thing that I found really interesting was that there's an acknowledgement that they were rattled during Bazball. You get the chest out, well, there was no such thing as Bazball. Yeah, there is. The phenomena exists. The way England play has changed the way Test cricket is played by both teams, not just them, but the teams they're playing against, and that's shown up best in the Test matches that follow, Lords. The way they got out of jail at Leeds, the way they played so aggressively at Manchester, and the way they were able to finish the job at the Oval, playing on their terms, and Australia trying to play their way. But Cummins acknowledges in the team meeting that they get access to that they were, rattled's the word I've used a couple of times, but that's the synopsis of it, really. There's another good bit that I neglected to mention yesterday as well. They follow the Lions story all the way through to the 5th Test match. So we get to watch the final day of the Oval through Nathan Lyon's eyes on his sofa. That was a great touch, because Nathan had been involved in 126 Test matches in a row in the dressing room, be it playing or as a member of the squad when he missed out on a few in 2013. Since 2011, since his debut, he'd been in the dressing room for every single Test.
Yeah, well, he hadn't played 4 until he got injured. From his debut, there were 4 tests where he'd been left out, and he'd still been in the squad. So
him getting to watch it on telly, that's a different twist on the Lions story at the end. And I won't go into every last detail. You should watch it when it comes out in a couple of days if you're listening to the pod, or and Jeff, you've got a link to watch it when you see fit to do so. But glad we did an episode on it. 80 Brown's a ripper. Great that we've got a relationship with him, and I hope they make another one. And if it's not until 2027, we'll so be it. We'll watch it then.
The county cricket stuff, you've been pumping this up to me as the greatest county cricket round ever. We shall see. It did start off with Jofra Archer with a putative comeback, you could call it, bowling for the second 11. I saw a bit of vision of this going around online with some clipped up stuff of him bowling some bumpers, and having some guys hop and weave, and then like some amusingly dumb comments from people going like, "Oh, why does he have to bowl short stuff all the time? Why doesn't he pitch the ball up?" Because it's a compilation. That's not every ball that he bowled. That is an edited video that shows some of the balls that he bowled. That's why, do these people watch highlights packages and be like, this guy's incredible. He hits every ball for 4. He has not faced a ball that he didn't smash for 4 until the one he got out. Some real smart cookies in the cookie bin.
And look, he was intentionally bowling short to test his body out. He's going to play 3 T20s this week, right? He's playing for England, and he's not bowled in a competitive game, albeit a second 11 fixture in this sense. And he didn't play the whole game or anything. They were just engineering it for him to have 6 overs at the bowling crease. He's trying to test his body, and thus he's bowling short, but fuck, he looked quick. So that's exciting for what comes ahead in the T20 World Cup. But the England series at the moment, there were tons of our colleagues down there at Beckenham watching, and they all came up to the Oval afterwards. It's only up the road, so 40 minutes down the road by car or something like that. So that was exciting on Friday to start the round. Little did we know what it would turn into, though.
That's where the Australian team was training before the Ashes last year, right? So the scene of David Warner's retirement announcement press conference and Jofra Archer's 6 overs of short stuff. As
Ben Gardner pointed out on Twitter last night, at 6:03 yesterday, so on evening 4, there were 3 county championship games still up for grabs. Of the results, Essex overturned a lead of 235. Kent were not far off overturning a deficit of 376. Durham almost chased 465. And Hampshire won from 77 for 3 and 77 for 6 and 44 for 5. Sussex defended 182, and even Surrey were 14 for 4 in the first hour against Worcester. Pretty good comp, in my opinion. I could not agree more. Every game was a cracker. There is not a bad game, and all 18 teams were playing. I haven't got much time to work with.
You've got 9 minutes to get through.
I know I'm limited on time, but I'm going to give you a feel for it. I won't go into as much depth as otherwise might be the case, but I'll start with Somerset beating Kent by 8 wickets for a 24-pointer. But that's the maximum. It doesn't come close to telling the story. Somerset make 554. Banton makes a ton, second in a row.
Could we call it a 24-pointer? Could we call it a Steph Curry, as in just like maximum points?
Max points, I like it. There's got to be a better term than just a 24-pointer. A full pinter, something like that. James Rue made 114.
Slab's got 24 beers.
Slab, there you go. That's very good. A slab. They got the slab. It was quite a funny tweet from Somerset, who are the chippiest club I've ever fucking seen, like saying, class is permanent about James Rue's ton, because you know how that usually goes. I think Xavier Beauchamp pointed this out on Twitter. It normally goes, form is temporary, class is permanent, as like a chippy thing when you've got a player who's been in a rut. James Rue turned 20 last week. No one's fucking doubting his class. Those guys need to get a grip. Lewis Gregory, 77. Tom Lammonby, 69. They've gone huge there. Then they've rolled Kent for 178. All that scoreboard pressure. Jack Leach was back in this game, by the way, picked up a couple of wickets in the first innings. A deficit of 376, Kent follow on, and then they make 564 at a run rate of 4.5 and over. Following on, and guess what? Having averaged fuck all for the whole season, having barely made a run, Zach Crawley, 238 from 267 balls, 31 fours, 4 sixes. Absolute classic of the Zach Crawley genre, looking at the highlights package, and perfectly timed.
267 balls. Didn't he make 267 against Pakistan?
He did. That's very nice. Good recollection from you. So they had support. Compton, Beldrummond, Denley all made 60 odds. They set Somerset 189, but they only got 49 overs to do it in. So it's totally game on in the final afternoon. But Matt Renshaw, steady as she goes, 82 not out at the top of the list. Had Andrew Umeed, the Scottish international, with him, who made 73, and they got there with 5 overs to spare. And Somerset to second on the table with a bullet. Talking to some Somerset people before the season, expectations where they might be mid-table this year, but they're giving themselves every opportunity on the field. Hampshire back in town. They've defeated Notts by 5 wickets, but an absolute beauty here as well. Notts 235, Lyndon James 105 not out. After they were 37 for 4 and 50 for 6. Then Hampshire reply with 276, so broadly in balance. Liam Dawson, 95. Can't stop, won't stop. Remember, he bowled 70 overs last week.
Yeah.
Stone took another 4-fer, and Rob Key talked about him the other day in an interview. So I think they've got Ollie Stone back on the... So what, he got 7 in the match last week, 4 for the start here. Pennington took 3. He's the other guy they're watching. Ben Jones did some number crunching for me on the Surrey stream about Pennington, by the way. His expected wicket rating is as good as anyone in the country. So he's only averaging like 25 this year, but that's why they like Pennington, that they think he's got all the component parts to make it. Anyway, Notts 209, and they set Hampshire 171. They're 44 for 5 at this point. In walks James Fuller, who makes 77 not out, batting at 7. Fletcher Pepper Middleton has a coming of age, 59 not out. A great away win, but again, a terrific contest across 4 days where it ebbed and flowed. All eyes on Durham with the Stokes return. Lanks get their first win, and again,
did Anderson
mental
play?
Game. No, he didn't. We were all thinking Jimmy might play, and then I think they're going to hold him back for that game, that one game before the. They've got one round before the test, so they're going to hold him back for that. I guess that makes sense. It is a shame. It would have been great
to see him like do his left-handers thing, just nibble off Stokes in both innings.
Yeah.
Bugger all.
Well, instead, Lyon did it. So let's just start with Lancashire. 357, Keaton Jennings 115. Never far away. Stokes gets 2
Lyon
wickets.
And Anderson in the same team would be funny as well. Just a couple of the grumpiest old bastards, like the cranky veterans of teams who played against each other for since 2013.
Yeah,
and probably hate each other, but then they'd have a fair bit in common.
Yeah, and probably grudging respect as well, given how many times they've bowled to each other and played against each other. So Lanks get 357. Stokes gets a couple of wickets, bowling pretty quickly as well. Since he missed the IPL, been working on that knee recovery. So that's good for England that he's able to bowl at full pace. Durham all out for 236. Lyon works Stokes over an absolute beauty. Bowls 8 balls to him, gets him caught at second slip, but Lyon perfection to a left-hander around the wicket, albeit one as capable as Stokes with all of their history. Then Lanks make 359, 353 for 9 declared. Jennings makes twin tons, 155 for the Lancashire captain. He's never far away. He was in a Lions squad last winter. Stokes was in the game with the ball, 5 for 98 from 20 overs. So, work that out. So 7 wickets for the match for Ben Stokes. Durham has set 475. At one stage, they're 350 for 4 with Bettingham and the other Ollie Robinson both past 100, but Bettingham's out to Lyon. The game changes. Lyon gets 2 to go with his 4 from the first innings, and they ultimately get bowled out for 414. Oliver Robinson, I should say. Yeah. 171 not out. So perfect timing for him to rattle off a big 4th innings 100 when they're trying to work out who's going to keep for England this summer. What a match. Lancashire, first win of the season by 60 runs, having nearly had 475 chased down.
And Bettingham just keeps going as well.
Yeah.
After that really impressive test series against New Zealand, every poster winner at the moment. You can't really put your name up in lights for South African selection because they don't have any test matches to play ever. But when they finally do have another one in 3 years' time, he'll be in the frame.
after Kent nearly turned over that massive deficit, Essex did it. They achieved it. Huge comeback at Chelmsford against Warwickshire. So Warwickshire make 397. Ed Barnard back-to-back hundreds. Good on him. Great response to their beating from Surrey last week, especially up against Cook and Porter on day one with the Duke's ball. Essex rolled for 162, which is very unusual at home for them. Che Simmons, who's a Bayesian quick, he's been with Warwickshire for a while, but on debut, the 20-year-old took 3 for 12. So a 235-run deficit. And then Warwickshire get rolled for 94, and it's Critchley time, Jeff. It's Matt Critchley time. 4 for 24 to lead them with the ball. Set 330 for the come-from-behind victory, and he's there at the end. 99 not out. They get home. They get home by 4 wickets. They did have Jordan Cox making a barnstorming 100 to get them going, and Dean Elgar laid the foundation. But it was all about Critchley batting with the lower order. Unfortunately, Simon Harmer hit a boundary to claim the winning runs. But yes, another tight win, having turned over a 235-run deficit. Critchley for England.
Well, it's its own genre, the unbeaten high 90s in an important case, a la Carey 98 not out against New Zealand. There's a different flavour to it. It has the aroma of selflessness, even if it was accidental.
Alex Tudor's 99 as well, which came up on Storytime last week. And the most normal air quotes game of them all.
Got out, though?
No, Graham Thorpe hit the winning runs, hit a boundary as well.
Yes, Thorpe 20-something not out.
Yeah. The most normal game was the game I was doing.
That's the most egregious of them, given he's a night watchman.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's no justification at all for what happened that day. So Surrey were hosting Worcestershire, who've gone through like this horrible time, right? Like you can't for a moment divorce what's happened to that club in the last few weeks from their performances. They made 600 plus last week. They had Surrey on morning one at the Oval, 14 for 4, with Joe Leach and Nathan Smith doing the damage. And all the England players are out, apart from the other 2 England players. Lawrence and Pope have put on 148 and saved the day and get them to 213. Then, unfortunately, Worcester can't back it up with the bat. All out 128. Down Worrall, 6 for 22. And Surrey go again, make 400 plus, which was inevitable. Clark 98, Lawrence 87, Smith 72, Burns 70, all the England players turning up at the same time, and Worcestershire bowled out for 231 to lose by 281, the biggest margin. But Worrall 4 for 35 in the second dig, match figures of 10 for fuck all. And as I said to you a couple of weeks ago, Jeff, he wants to play for England. And while he keeps doing this for Surrey, in a year's time when he's eligible, couldn't rule it out.
You never know.
Could not rule it out at all. He's the best bowler in the country right now.
The artist, pitch artist, Daniel Worrall. He's got a creative frame of mind.
He does.
He's cricket's Banksy, if you
will. Give you a quick scenario here, by the way. He'll become eligible in April. If Cook doesn't dominate, right, he'll be 33. 5 tests against India, right, with the Duke's ball, which he's hooping around corners. Then 5 tests in Australia with the Kookaburra ball that he knows so well.
He knows how to bowl.
So they might just go, you know what, we need you for 10 test matches and that's it. So watch this space. I'm running out of time for Divi 2, which is a bloody shame because there was 2 nail-biting wins and 2 thrilling draws. Sussex held on to beat Yorkshire by 21 runs at Hove. This game went all the way down to the wire. Adam Lyth was batting at the end. They were set 183, wickets falling down the other end. And then England's Ollie Robinson ends it, as a senior bowler should. Takes 4 for 42. They win by 21 runs and stay on top. Then we go to the Freaks, Jeff. This is a wider story with them this week around how their ownership structure might work. Arron Banks, Jeff, you might remember from programs such as funding the Brexit campaign or Leave UK or whatever it was called. He was the UKIP Nigel Farage funder as well. And he just enjoys trying to keep himself in the national conversation, and he's seen an opportunity here. He's written to Gloucestershire members, inviting them all to his house, which I guess is some kind of flex there, claims to be a big fan, yet in his open letter, in his manifesto to become the man to take over Gloucestershire County Cricket Club, his main suggestions are making county games 3 days again over 110 overs, getting the number of teams wrong in the competition, saying there are 17 not 18. So clearly he's not been paying attention since the early 90s when Durham came in.
Yeah,
he said
he's a big fan of the VFL. Hasn't watched the game since Port Power came into the comp.
It said that all touring sides should be mandated to play every county. He said that test players...
That cracked me up,
Yeah, right, like that's going to happen.
Saying sign up for a 3-month tour so they can play 18 sides.
and like he can achieve that from running Gloucestershire. He can make the whole world change in that way. Saying that you can't play Test cricket unless you play in the county championship. Good luck telling that to all the IPL players. And says he's got a chairman in mind. George Chabelle did a nice takedown of this, and it's shooting fish in a barrel to a certain extent. But this guy should be nowhere near a cricket club, and I'm encouraged by the fact that a lot of Gloucestershire members on social media have been saying as much. This guy's a complete fraud when it comes to his interest in the game. He's just seeing an opportunity to remain vaguely relevant, and he'll be rejected accordingly.
Yes, and the prospect of making 3-day games a thing, like you already have half the thing drawn as it is. There are so many shitty scorecards that we look through from all the storytime research that we do about drab 3-day games where a day gets rained off, and it's just the most pointless exercises. It staggers me.
Yeah, it reflects his inability to see the world for what it is.
More exciting. We have 3-day games to make it more exciting. How? How does that make it better?
He's a buffoon. On a similar theme, by the way, Colin Graves, just as I think everyone really, but we certainly on the podcast said when he took over Yorkshire again, he now wants to see them privatised. So his view or his public position is that if they don't begin the process now, moving away from being member owned, that they'll go bust. It needs to happen now. But we also know that his family trust have got a lot of money to recover from Yorkshire, which is reportedly a major incentive for him to return in the first place. So, anyway, you do the maths on that, dear listener. You do the maths on that. Something like 15 million quid. Yeah. So, very, very quickly through these games, I know we've got to go to a break. Gloucestershire made 700 for 6 declared in their first innings, a ton for Bancroft, but they'd never made 700 before. So, great response by the Freaks, having been at the bottom of the table. Unfortunately, having to bowl for 2.5 days, making Leicestershire follow on. It didn't quite work. They fell 3 wickets short. They probably should have gotten there, but not to be. So they get into 4th spot via the draw. Middlesex hold on. A great win by 2 wickets at Cardiff. Another absolute belter where they were chasing in the final innings. It got really close. And there was a 52-run partnership for the final wicket between Jack Davies and Tom Helm, who took 4 wickets earlier in the game, to get home after 6 p.m. on the final evening, chasing 213, winning by 2 wickets to stay in second spot. And we've had every other combination, Jeff. What about the drawing a game 9 down to finish? That's what we had at Derbyshire. They were hosting Northampton. A high-scoring game, plenty of runs scored, especially by Northampton. Emilio Gay, 153, not out in the second innings, and Derbyshire were holding on for dear life. They only had 3 wickets in hand with an hour to go, and they got there due to Zach Chappell and Anuj Dal, who does great work for the Professional Cricketers Association as well. Had 1 over to get through at the end with the number 11, and they did so. And what a round! It's complete. Sussex are leading the way ahead of Middlesex and Leicestershire. And in the division that we neglected to mention before, Division 1, Surrey have got that game buffer, but Somerset and Essex, because they both won, are both within striking distance as well, with 1 more game before the break, and that is the big county wrap.
There it is. Okay, we've got a break. We've got a big competition as well. That's going to come up after the break. We've got Nerd Pledge. We've got plenty more in just a minute.
Final word, Adam Collins, Jeff Lemon. Jeff, I'm going to get you to take it away on the Westfield competition. I must admit, this has been in your to-do column. You've been working on this assiduously behind the scenes. I know we've been teasing it, but I don't understand it. You tell me what we're doing.
We're doing a competition with Westfield where it's pretty easy. You just need to download the app, and then it'll be once a week. And you don't know this yet, so you couldn't do this yet. But the smart thing to do would be download it and then check what the prompt is before you listen to the weekly episode. And it will ask you a question about something that happened on the weekly show. It'll ask you for a word. It's not the secret sound, but you need to listen to the show and you'll be asked a question about something that happened on the show. And if you can answer that, you go into the draw, and you can keep entering each week as well. So there's a weekly prize, which is a 50 quid gift card for Westfield, which is fine, and there's a big prize, which we're working out the details of. We've got various irons in the fire, but it's going to be good.
Cool.
So consider this the soft launch this week, but from here on, once you've downloaded the app before the episode's gone up, it'll ask you a question. What is this? Who is that? Something about what we spoke about,
right.
and then you've got to keep an ear on the show to be able to answer the question.
I
which
see.
means
So,
a degree of difficulty, which means you're a good chance to win stuff because not everybody's going to get it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, I mean, these 50 quid gift vouchers for basically listening to the show and answering a question, but you need to have listened closely enough to get the question right. We won't make it too tough. I mean, this week's could have been, who is the dickhead former political donor who's trying to take over Gloucestershire? And if you listen to
probably
segment
answer that without listening to the show, but
true. We might make it slightly trickier than that. But it's a good point. So there's the link in the show notes now. There's a little URL, a shortened URL. It'll be easy to download the app there, and I think that'll take you straight to the comp. We'll have, how will we do this? We will, from here, as we work on the fly, we will tell Westfield, when we're there this afternoon, indeed, what the code word is for this episode.
We record the show. We tell them what the thing is. They put it in the app, and then by the time the show goes out the next day, right. This is how it works. This is what pre-recording allows us to do.
Okay, then the name gets pulled out of the hat, and you could win yourself the 50 quid gift voucher. That is perfect. I love it.
And you're in the draw for the big prize, which is
in the draw for the big prize.
Yeah.
Terrific. What a great organisation to be in association with. Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary. Jeff, we did a lot of stuff in segment one,
we did.
But what we didn't do was what we typically would, which is called
Nerd Pledge, the game we play with nice people on the internet who fund this program by sending in an amount of currency in a configuration of their choice. The number relates to cricket in some way, and we have to figure out what it means. Thilo Fob. Kilo Green, as we might like to
Big
call
T.
it. Friend of the show, Germany's premier entrant to the University of Western Australia Biomechanical Testing Institute, who has played for the final word across continents, has come up on the list as the pledger. The number was $3, I think it was dollars, because I think he was back in Australia when this one came in, $18. So 318 was the number, and it just came in as the number. There was no clue attached. So we looked at a few options. It was a point of interest to our researchers as well that 318 is the cap number of Sam Cooke, not that Sam Cooke, but the previous Sam Cooke. There's already been a Sam Cooke play test for England, a proper dusty old bastard, a one-test wonder. One test in 1947. We'll talk about him another time, but enjoyed this line from David Frith about Cook's not very good batting. Nothing flustered him, said Frith. He would stroll into bat at a moment of late order crisis, as if he were wandering down to Tetbury's Priory Inn for a pint before closing. The bronzed face revealed not the merest anxiety. This for a guy who had a higher score of 35 not out from 612 first-class innings. So he didn't mind. But anyway, it's not going to be Sam Cooke. I went back to Thilo and said, okay, 318 is an open field. Do you have something in mind? And he said, it is 3 for 18, but not a cricket stat, but the other sport. And just rang a little bell.
The other sport. Is this a footy thing?
Well, this is a who played two sports thing. And and who very prominently played two sports things. Elise Alexandra Perry played 3 times for the Australian women's under-20s, 18 times for the seniors. That doesn't work for 3 for 18, but 3 for 18 works for 3 goals for 18 appearances in senior international football. So the third goal is the one the stonker in the World Cup semi-final versus Sweden in 2011, which is worth, I mean, I did watch it back another 10 times in preparing this answer because, you're a defender cruising up, sort of down the wing, coming in from the flank, drifting in, receiving the ball, drifting in towards sort of the corner of the box and then launching this left-footed curler across the box into the far corner, which, a keeper should be able to have covered, but it's so perfectly placed and the power on it just means the keeper's left stranded. In that game, it brought the score back to 2-1, but Australia went on to concede another and lose 3-1 against Sweden.
I think she said in the past, hasn't she, Jeff, that she didn't mean to score. Like it was the kick.
Cross in.
Yeah, it was designed to get
someone
to
on
the
end
spot.
of the header.
Yeah, thereabouts, and just got a bit more on it, and was one of those that was just perfectly struck, and the rest is history. Well, she's a World Cup goal scorer.
No good. Got to claim it. Definitely got to claim it. So it is worth noting that until Sam Kerr scored that wonder goal against England in the semi-final, Elise Perry's was the last women's football knockout goal for Australia. In between, there wasn't one scored in between those because the quarterfinal last year they got through 0-0 and won on penalties, so nobody scored.
Right.
So,
I think that one with Perry, by the way, I'm pretty sure that was a quarter, not a semi.
Yeah, it was a quarter, but it was a knockout. So it was the last. So
until
Kerr in the semi, there hadn't been a knockout goal between Perry.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think you said it was a semi-final against Sweden before, but yeah, we're on the same page. All
right. So some smart people online also enjoy bringing out the stat that Elise Perry has scored more World Cup knockout runs than Sachin Tendulkar and more World Cup knockout goals than Cristiano Ronaldo, which is a little bit cherry picking, but there you go. Now, it's interesting. We talked about Perry with the Australian cricket debut in 2007, plays an ODI in Darwin. It's 2 weeks after that when she makes her football debut for Australia in Hong Kong in an Olympic qualifier. So an absolutely bizarre couple of weeks for a then 16-year-old, 17-year-old. So she scores her first goal in her first game as well, which, she's a defender. It's not supposed to go that way. And it's not like an American Samoa piling on the goals situation. They win that game 1-0. She's the difference. She waits almost a year for her next goal, which she scores in Vietnam in the Asia Cup. So all of her career goals are away from home, which is another interesting quirk. The 2007 football debut was interesting because the W League doesn't even exist at this point, right? So Elise Perry not only predates cricket professionalism in Australia, but she predates football, the top tier of women's football in Australia, because that didn't get going until the end of 2008. And when it does start, her first season's at the Central Coast, then she goes to play for Canberra. The W League at this point is running October to January, so not great for cricket, but it's also that era where the Southern Stars get treated in a fairly condescending way, and then by scheduling, they don't play much in the peak summer. So they play a fair bit in February and March, and it seems like every year for a few years they tour New Zealand, and then New Zealand tour Australia, and it's always in Feb, March, which means that Perry can play those games. She goes to England in 2009, wins the best and fairest at Canberra in their first season, or the first season that she plays there, which is their second season in the comp. Gets picked in the Football World Cup in 2011, a la that Sweden game. And then it's kind of after that point that the clashes between the two sports start to become more of a thing. It's interesting that the football code is the more possessive one at first. Canberra by 2012 says you have to quit cricket or we're not going to pick you anymore, right. Which is, it's a big flex for a W League club where nobody's getting paid, and there's professionalism hasn't kicked in. But she, instead of doing that, gets an offer from Sydney FC, who are a bit more inclined to go for the marquee talents, and so they say, actually, it's fine, you can play cricket and football if you're at Sydney. So she goes and does that instead. Bit of star power, and the clashes start to become more of a thing. So 2013, she chooses to play the Sydney FC semi-final instead of the New South Wales T20 final. But then the next week, she skips the football grand final that they've won through to, because there's a cricket World Cup warm-up game. And then the following season, early 2014, she plays the Sydney semi-final for football instead of a WNCL 50-over cricket final for New South Wales. So there's this interesting power flex where it's like football trumps state cricket, even if it's a final, but international cricket trumps football to the point where she'll play a warm-up game rather than play a domestic football final, which is quite interesting.
I remember when this all really reached the point of no return. It was in early 2016 when it was the final, possibly semi-final. I can't remember the exact fixture, but it was set of the W League, and she was named. And I don't know whether she knew she was being named, but she was named. And on the same day, Australia were playing India in a one-day international at the SCG. T20, sorry. Yeah, we were there for that.
They lost that 2-1, the series.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And I remember at the time it was like, well, is Elise Perry playing cricket today? No one really knew because she'd been named in the football team and ended up playing cricket, and that was it. I don't think she played again after that point.
No, that's the thing. But what was interesting is that she'd barely played that season football-wise. Right. She played early. She played in December 2015 at the start of that, or earlier in that season. But that game was a week after the WBBL had started, the very first Big Bash season, and so basically from then she was WBBL all over the place and didn't have the option to play more football, and so was picked in that grand final as a specky, basically.
Yeah. I think that's. We'll look back at that and we'll sort of reflect on. I think that she gave it a red hot go, and being a dual international was a big part of her story, and it was bloody exciting. But I think, like a lot of men who have come through wanting to play cricket professionally, they've ultimately had to forego their football, and this was an early sign of like professionalism, like really being a thing in women's cricket. It was only, as you say, season 1 of the WBBL, but until this point, it was sustainable to have those two sports running side by side at the top level. But she's the last who will do it, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. At the seriously top level, you might get some domestic cricketers who play footy, and we've seen that, of course, in AFLW. But playing for your country, a bit different.
Well, exactly, and she'd already, like I said again, it was before cricket wasn't flexing, football was flexing, because before all this happened with that WBBL season and so on, she was already being left out of the international football team squads. They had a coach called Hesterine de Roos, who basically said, well, you're not playing enough. You're not playing frequently enough in the domestic league to get picked. And so she wasn't in squads from that point on. And that was really that. She was kind of out of football before she was out of cricket at international level, and then couldn't juggle it domestically. And finishes up with that 3 for 18, 3 goals for 18 games for Australia. But interestingly, it also links back to, like, maybe it was just more fun playing cricket because Australia made finals and won them, whereas that didn't happen in football. But that starts in 2010, the first final that she wins. She's bowling the last over in what is retrospectively the T20 World Cup, defending bugger all against New Zealand, who need 5 to win off the last ball. You remember this story. Sophie Devine drills it back down the ground. It looks like she's hit it for 4 to tie the game, and Perry pulls out the football skills, sticks the foot out, volleys it down to mid-off where Slaker is fielding. New Zealand get 1 run, and Perry finishes with figures of 3 for 18.
Very good.
It wasn't even supposed to be Thilo's number, but there we go. He's done a perfect double. Although a postscript, there's a website called eliseperry.com, which I'm going to assume is run by her. That says she played 16 times. So I don't know. Everywhere else says 18, but her website says 16. But her website also says she was a midfielder, which she wasn't. So I don't know.
That might be someone else's website.
Maybe someone else.
That might be where, there's quite a few Elise Perry
weirdos.
Weird handles on social media. Like many weird handles. Thank you, Jeff. Nerd Pledge, patreon.com/a final word. We told you earlier in the show why it's great to join up with us with the added bonus now of being able to access the ad-free feed. Let's get back into it here. Now, we were just talking about Elise Perry in the context of what she's doing then as a footballer. You go back and think about her domestic cricketing career. It has been balanced between Victoria and New South Wales at different times, and they are the two giants of women's cricket. 65% of players who make it do come from Victoria and New South Wales, and there's been a really interesting flex during the week, a Daniel Brettig story, where we're getting this new T20 tournament that's been formalised by CA today, actually. They put out a press release saying there'll be a T20 competition across the states. But the desire for Victoria and New South Wales is that, well, we've got 2 BBL teams, the Sydney teams and the Melbourne teams. We should be getting 2 teams each in this state-based T20 comp. And they have gotten their way. So there'll be 9 teams in it, the ACT the 9th. But Nick Cummins, who's the chief executive of Cricket Victoria and Cricket New South Wales, initiated what was described in the paper as a shit fight. It sounds like the ACA wanted to keep the traditional 1 team per state, but the big 2 of women's Australian cricket argued that they'd risk losing players to other sports if they did it this way, which I don't know whether I entirely agree with that, remembering that this comp's being played after the WBBL. Often it'll be when the Australian players, most of whom come from Victoria and New South Wales, are with the national squad. So whether this really jeopardise professional relationships for the New South Wales and Victorian players at domestic level, I kind of doubt it. But I suppose when you've got the power and you want to exert it, you can do stuff like this, and they've gotten their way.
It seems completely bizarre to me, given how poorly the Victorian sides have fared in the Big Bash for its entirety. I mean, the Melbourne Stars have been absolute dross for the entirety of the existence of the WBBL. They've almost never threatened to make finals. They've scraped up towards competitiveness a couple of times, but it's always been on fumes. The Renegades have been better in that they've had some good seasons. They've produced some players. They've had some players come through, in the likes of, say, Courtney Webb or Josie Dooley or Sophie Molyneux, Molly Strano. Some of her work for them, although she was already a good player there. But they've had a better record, I suppose, of developing players. But their best performers have often been imports. They've brought in players from other states. They've had international players. It's not like these two teams are bursting with quality, which means that they have to. They can't possibly squeeze those into 11. That doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe there's a little more of an argument for New South Wales, but the Sydney Thunder have been pretty poor recently as well. So where's this demand coming from that says that they can't possibly? It seems more an ego thing than a reality thing.
Well, yeah, I'm just reading through the release now as you were talking then. So the formulation of words used in the official announcement is that there will be teams representing the 8 WBBL teams as well as a team representing the ACT. So, and they're also saying it'll precede the WBBL season rather than being played after. So there are two little tweaks on what we originally thought would be the case when the big action plan went out from CA a couple of weeks ago. I wonder how that'll work. So that the players who, let's say you're a Victorian Spirit player in a WNCL, but you play your Big Bash cricket somewhere else. Perth. So you play for Perth, which isn't without precedent that players have different arrangements between the WBBL and their state cricket. Because this is a standalone state tournament, do you then play for your WBBL team? Or are they going to even call them? Wouldn't that be weird, having a second T20 comp where you've got the WBBL,
which is basically a warm-up.
Surely this will end up being Victoria Blue, Victoria White, New South Wales Blue, New South Wales White, and the rest of the.
It's a weird thing to begin with. So basically, reducing the WBBL, I think fundamentally I agree with that because it is a bloated competition. It's hard to keep track of the games. It's hard to cram them all in to the amount of time. You had listening back to that Anna Lanning episode we had from season 1 where they were having teams play twice in a day and 3 times in 2 days and all this kind of nonsense. It's not quite that silly anymore, but it does. It makes it hard to get people excited about the competition, as we've seen with the men's one. If it goes on for too long, if you have it shorter, you can pump more investment into marketing and promotion of a smaller number of games. They're more of an event. When the game is on, it matters more. You're more likely to get crowds in, all the rest of it. So that all makes sense because there's more cricket being played domestically. The 50-over competition's expanded. The contracts are there to allow players to get paid. So that they can play year-round and all the rest of it. And so they've made that decision and then sort of gone, but now there's a bit of a gap, which means that, we need to up the game time again. We need to replace those games with something else. And so we're going to have this strange sort of pseudo, Fabio, I can't believe it's not the WBBL competition, and play that instead and play it first. So then it's glorified runway for the other competition. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
Oh, look, I don't mind the idea of it. I would have far preferred them having a 3-day comp in this window. That would have made more sense to me. I don't mind it as an idea. I also don't mind them reducing the WBBL. That was, as you can predict from the usual suspects online, weaponised a couple of weeks ago from people not paying attention. The Australian players wanted the WBBL reduced for logical reasons of workload, because the women's game is mirroring more and more the men's game with how taxing it is, darting around the world, all the various commitments, and the very, very top line players didn't want to have the 14-game season anymore. So that's been reduced. I think that's perfectly fine. And this will play a role in helping with match payments for players who would have earned less money because the WBBL season is shorter. Totally cool with that as well. Where I'm a bit funny about it is the idea that Victoria and New South Wales, because they've got the existing heft, it's like graduated privilege, right? It's one of those ones where because they've got the privilege to start with, they'll continue to have a pathway that's stronger. It'll go on and on forever that they'll remain this. But you're right too in saying that they haven't necessarily had. That hasn't turned into, for Victoria at least, results where they've been winning WBBL pennants. So anyway, that's all ticking on in the background of the women's domestic cricket scene. Staying with the women's game, England beat Pakistan 3-0 in the series that we talked about briefly last week. Nat Sciver-Brunt, we learnt between the first and the second games, missed the first T20 because she was undergoing an egg freezing procedure. She spoke about it on Catherine's podcast, which was kind of a nice way of telling their story. And they've always been extremely open telling their story. It's part of what's made them such leaders too, is that they've for years now been happy to talk about their relationship more widely, which is their prerogative. But yeah, she's 31. That's saying she wants to keep playing, but she wants to keep her options open. So by going through this procedure, that gives them all the opportunities in the world down the track. So good for them.
Yep, and pretty easy wins in the end after they got tested in that first game where they were wobbling. Batting first, they won the second one by 65 runs, made 144 for 6. Alice Capsey making some runs with Sciver-Brunt as well, and then bowled out Pakistan for 79. So a capitulation there. Wickets shared around Eccleston, Capsey, Glenn, Bell taking 2s and 3s.
Yeah, and look at the Eccleston story here, right? So 3 for 11 in the second game. Then in the third game, Danny Wyatt, actually, go to her first, 87 from 48. I reckon if I said to you, Jeff, how old's Danny Wyatt? You'd be like, fuck, I have no idea. She's been around forever, but she seems perennially young.
I seem to remember her playing in like 2010, which...
Oh, yeah.
Which
she made her international debut when she was 16.
Right.
So she has been around forever and had many reinventions as a cricketer, obviously, as England's number one T20 opener these days. And she's 33. There you go, if you were curious. She made 87 from 48 to get England up to 176, batting far better in the third game than they had in the first two. Diana Baig, who is a great human being and is pals with my daughter Winnie, took 3 for 26 for Pakistan, back in the side, didn't play the first couple. Pakistan did far better with the bat, 79 all out in game 2, 142 for 4 in the chase. So that's probably their ceiling. They were never getting 177, but going at 7s against that bowling attack's not for nothing. Yeah. Aliyah Riaz, who is a real prospect, she's probably, I want to say 22 now, made 35 not out at the end, batting with the captain, Nita Dart, who made 29, but England too tidy in the middle. Eccleston, 1 for 19 from 4. I just took a quick look at her numbers. In T20 international cricket, she averages 14.7, Eccleston. And there's a reason why she's ranked number 1 in the world. And just quickly, Jeff, before moving off domestic cricket in England, the Charlotte Edwards Cup opening rounds on Saturday and Sunday, just one game apiece. Blaze beat the Vipers in a close. Thunder big win over the Diamonds. Sparks were 7 wicket winners over the Sunrisers, who are top of the table in the Rachel Hey-Ho. And the Southeast Stars held on against the Storm. Wello, Amanda Wellington, one of our faves, is back over here ahead of the 100. She took 3 for 22 in a losing effort. But once again, Tash Frant was the match winner. It's been with the bat earlier in the season. With the ball here, she's had a fantastic May. This tournament's a bit harder to stay on top of than the Rachel Hey-Ho because they play the games in clumps, but we'll do the best we can over the next few weeks in the domestic women's T20 tournament here in England. Jeff.
Sandeep Lamachain, this is strange news during the week, acquitted of his sexual assault conviction and then straight into the Nepal squad for the T20 World Cup. We don't have the detail here, but it feels off in one way or another. He got sentenced to 8 years in prison. He was in prison. He was allowed out before the sentencing and was playing games until the sentence came through, and then was in prison, got an appeal up very quickly, remarkably expeditiously, and in what seems like a very short space of time, a court has decided to acquit him, and now he's allowed to go and play cricket again. They made him the captain in 2022. He'd been playing as recently as last year, so I don't know. We sort of don't know enough about it to give informed comment, so maybe it's better not to, but just to note that has happened and that the rapidity and decisiveness of it seems pretty strange in the circumstances. Yeah,
the timing, the coincidental timing, if you want to call it that, does stand out. I know when he was playing, when he was between being found guilty and going to prison, there was that window when...
Yeah, it was before sentencing, I think.
I think
the charge hadn't been decided on yet.
Right.
So he'd been... The charge was... The court date was pending, but it hadn't taken place yet.
I know that opposing players refused to shake his hand, so, that'll be that'll be clearly a talking point when we get to the World Cup and Nepal playing. For the first time in a decade, the last time they turned out was in the 2014 edition of the tournament, so they've named their squad. We've seen the New York venue is ready. Jeff, it looks pretty good. I've got to say, the pictures during the week, fair play to them. We've been sceptical for obvious reasons about the suitability of putting up a pop-up stadium in 3 months or whatever it is, but it looks like they've laid the turf, and the drop-in pitch has been curated by Damien Huffer, Adelaide Oval, who knows a thing or two about these things. So all looks good. Can't wait to get there week after next. In other bits and pieces, Bangladesh's Blazers, goodness gracious me, I need one. I need that in my life. Have you seen it, Jeff? No. They've got the old-fashioned team Blazers they've taken over. Like, as in, these days no one wears them, right? Bangladesh have gone retro, and I've sent a message to Issam saying, can you please somehow get me one of these? I would love to wear it everywhere. And maybe to I'd wear it as often as Winnie is now wearing her Jack Inovan jumper. Can't get it off her. So they've named their squad during the week. Australia have formally confirmed that Jake Fraser McGurk and Matt Short will be their travelling reserves, which is not for nothing. Players happen to get away. Well, and not only that, but we do know that players do mysteriously get injuries during tournaments, don't they? When wanting to make tweaks to squads and so on. So I guess that gives them that extra degree of flexibility. And last on this is that Jamie Overton won't be going as a reserve, nor will he be added to the England squad like we thought there was an outside chance of doing. For very sadly, he's got another stress fracture. That's 2 in 2 years for Jamie Overton. His twin brother Craig, got an operation over the winter to fix his own back problems. I wonder, because they've got the same genetic makeup, whether... is that something you consider? If it's worked for my twin, maybe I do the same thing, or am I? I don't know. Maybe I'm being too.
Maybe. And if their time, their possibility to qualify for England is passing, would you call that the closing of the Overton window?
Very good. Very good. Every time I'm commenting on Jamie's games for Surrey, I find a way of talking about the Overton window with Daniel and so on. But it works for this as well. Also timely before the World Cup, Ireland have finally got the contract situation sorted, so that the Irish Cricketers Association rejected the previous offer. They've been on these month-to-month rolling deals, and now they're set until February next year. It's a significant pay rise according to the joint press release. It's the biggest share of the new money that's coming to the organisation is going to the players, which is, I think, as we learn, that's what people want, right? Administrators want to pay the players as best they can. Cecilia Joyce, of the famous Joyce clan, former Irish captain, she's president of the Cricketers Association, said it was a significant outcome. So I guess that'll be a relief for everyone ahead of their own World Cup campaign that is going to be in the Caribbean.
Yep.
New York or the Caribbean?
They're
New York.
in Ireland or in New York.
They're with us.
Begin with, yes.
Yeah.
And
they're with us.
They weren't able to knock off Pakistan again. Lorcan Tucker made more runs, though. 73 or 41, made 53 in the previous game.
Going well.
Didn't stop Pakistan chasing 178 by 6 wickets. They did it pretty comfortably. Babar Azam 75 to lead the win.
All right, Jeff. I think that's time for us just to take a beat. And in my case, go to yoga when I return from that and have a bit of a stretch and keep the body going well ahead of the marathon. In a couple of hours, we'll pick up this chat, talk about the Indian Premier League, and we'll do it from the go-karts at Westfield, Stratford City. How does that sound?
I hope you're in a go-kart going around the track while you're recording. That will be a new thing for the show.